Hi there. Welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast with Lisa Schlossberg. I'm your host, Lisa Schlossberg, a licensed social worker, certified health coach, personal trainer, and yoga instructor. If you, like I have, struggle with your relationship with food, eating, and body image, I am here with this podcast to guide you into healing the relationship you have with yourself through a trauma-informed, holistic, and mind-body-soul approach. Together, we can support you in building a lifestyle of more peace, freedom, safety, and power. Hello again. Welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast. This is your girl, Lisa Schlossberg, and we are back. We are back again, audio, video, wherever you are finding this. We are here. We are ready and very excited, as always. So today I find myself, it is a gloomy, cloudy, rainy Sunday afternoon. I'm still in Austin, Texas, and this, as usual, is really going to be a continuation of the previous episode. But before I get into that, I wanted to revisit the announcement about Patreon and what I want to create there. And as I've had this idea now floating around in my head for a little bit, I think the intention, at least as of today, is really twofold, because there are kind of two other, so I talked about there are like these two deviating paths of the podcast being the podcast and then the Patreon being the Patreon. And now I'm thinking that within the Patreon, there are also kind of two separate paths. One of which is I want to tell you a little bit more about, like I said, kind of the details and the more vulnerable personal stuff that has been coming up and sharing that. But then I also want to share about specifically my experience of what creating this has been like. So I will give you just kind of the brief overview here, but it's an example of what has happened a few, I don't want to say a few times now, but it's happened. And I want to tell you a little bit about it, which is recently what I want to teach from, the place that I want to teach from is using myself as an example, but not just my past experiences as an example, but how showing up to make this and produce this, like I mentioned, it has been really emotional and is challenging me in all sorts of ways, pushing me out of my comfort zone and really requiring next level authenticity and vulnerability from me. And what I want to tell you about is also how I am coping with that. And so what I have experienced, quite honestly, is that I am receiving the messages from myself about when it's going a little too far, when this project is pushing me into a place where now I'm using coping mechanisms that I do not want to be using, how my own patterns of emotionally eating, but also emotionally doing other things as well has showed up, and what I'm learning and what I'm able to practice and what I think I can also teach and offer to you from this perspective of like how, maybe I'm going into my danger zone and then I'm bringing it back into kind of my learning zone, and how I am watching it also reflected in my behaviors and certain coping mechanisms and such. So there's that part of it, where it gets really kind of meta, like this process of creating is where all of this stuff is coming out that I get to practice, that everything that I'm talking to you about, tender self-compassion, fierce self-compassion, radical acceptance, embodiment, I mean, all of it is like, I get to do this because this process of sharing and also now being seen visibly is nerve-wracking for me, but I'm doing it. So anyway, so there's that. But then I also, like I said, am interested in sharing more of the personal stuff. And one of those, just to give you an idea, I just want to give you like a little kind of taste of what I'm talking about. In the last episode, I was sharing about my list of like thin privilege and the things I was starting to experience after I lost weight. And as I was reading through that list, one of the things that I read was I can see my feet, period. Like when I look down, I can see my feet. And that was like, that was just like a gut punch for me to read and remember, because I was just immediately brought back to what it felt like when I would stand in the shower as a teenager and I couldn't see my feet because I couldn't see past my belly. And then I would kind of play this game with myself of like, if I lean back enough, at what point can I start to see my feet, or can I see my toes? And I just haven't thought about a lot of this stuff in a long time because it's no longer my life. And like, I now, as much as I have said, and I do believe, and I feel like, the bigger version of me, and by bigger in this sense, I mean the fatter version of me, I have that lens through which I see the world. But I really do benefit from thin privilege every day of my life these days. And so the same way that I was saying, other people don't necessarily think about it. You never thought about the fact that you could just put a hair tie on your wrist. I haven't had to think about the fact that there was a period of time where I couldn't see my feet. So I want to share, more things like that, and have the space and the time to talk about all of it. And also, this is what I mean when I say it's taking a lot from me to create this, because, I'll be here like, yeah, I remember that list where I wrote about the hair ties, and that's what I remember about it. And then all of a sudden I read through it and I just get this gut punch of, grief and pain and sadness about what it was like. And it's something that I have to move through and metabolize and sit with and cry about and breathe through. And it's quite a journey. So that's kind of what I mean when I say this has been such a ride. And so I feel excited about having a space to get more into those kinds of things. And for what it's worth, the energy of, or at least my intention with Patreon, is to create a place that, I said to someone the other day, I was like, I keep thinking of the phrase like a fireside chat. Like, we get to just sit around and have a fireside chat, and I get to tell you some stories. And I was thinking also about how back when Instagram Live was like a big thing, I used to think about, I had this idea anyway of doing like story time with Schlossberg or something like that. And I think that's what Patreon can be the home of in a lot of ways. So anyway, I wanted to follow up on that and share a little bit more context. And then, if there's more questions, please let me know. But this is something we get to kind of co-create as a podcast community, which is also something I'm really excited about. So, all right, now let's get into it. My first follow-up thought on the last episode, I thought about this while I was recording, and then I let the voice in my head that was like, just move on, get to the next point, kind of take over. And so I didn't finish all of this, but I'm, now I'm like, whatever, I want to say what I want to say. So what I want to add to the experience of when I was a personal trainer and my client was like being really judgy of this woman walking around in a sports bra, doing the whole, or saying like, this is so inappropriate, why can't she just put some clothes on, blah, blah, blah. And then I started thinking about, and this is the way I always thought about it, was, she was looking at this woman being like, she should be more clothed. And you might be listening to this or watching this. You might be listening to this being like, yeah, she should put more clothes on. Like maybe you agree with that, and that's totally fine. It's not about, the point that I want to make here in general is it's not about right or wrong. It's not about walking around in a sports bra at a gym is inherently good or bad or right or wrong, or that we should or should not be doing it. And this extends to everything in life. It's not about, is this good or bad or right or wrong? It's about how you feel about it. So this woman walking around in a sports bra, she feels fine about it. That's the choice that she made because that's aligned with her. And if you are not okay with that, or if you don't agree with that, then that's not okay for you. But it's not about like a capital T truth being that you are correct or that she is correct, right? It just, we believe different things. And so what this also reminds me of, it just so happens to be, gym related, but it really, this shows up in so many ways. But what I think about also was, all right, so I don't know if this is an annual thing for Equinox the gym, or if it was just last year or the year before, whenever it was. But what Equinox did was, it was either, I don't remember, it was either that you can't sign up for a gym membership on January 1st or the first week of the month, but I honestly think it was like maybe the entire month of January. I don't know if they went that far, but they had a whole campaign around, fitness is a lifestyle, and we are not doing the whole sign up for a gym membership in January thing. Take your New Year's resolution somewhere else, because we are the gym for people who take it seriously, who make this a lifestyle. And that was their whole thing. So you literally couldn't join Equinox for whatever period of time it was at the beginning of the year. And this is like, it's such a good example to me of something that's going to be really polarizing, right? That is, and we could talk about this, business coaches and stuff will talk about all the time about being polarizing, because it's like you attract some people and you repel other people. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. Because what you're doing is saying, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and the people that are on board with that are going to be attracted to it, right? Some people would see that and be like, hell yeah, this is why I love Equinox. This is why I want to be a part of Equinox. They're making a statement about their brand, and you're either going to be in or out, and that's fine. It's not that if you love that, you're good, or if you hate that, you're bad. It's just, this doesn't align for me. And so very much like I was talking about how I have tasted the flavor of different gym environments to feel into, where do I feel like I belong? And I'll just straight up say, like I was saying last time, I like to breathe and grunt a little. I'm not shy about the way I work out. And so like no shade at all to somewhere like Planet Fitness, and no shade at all to anyone who goes to Planet Fitness or loves Planet Fitness, but that's just not for me. Like that doesn't work for me. It's not aligned for me. Okay. So going back to this Equinox thing, I remember seeing that and being like, that's a choice, that's a statement. Sure. Okay. See what they're doing there. I can be a little bit on board with it, and I could be definitely not entirely on board with it. I had a lot of feelings. So anyway, but what I remember about it and what stood out to me was, I remember seeing a Facebook post of someone that I know who is, or at least was, a personal trainer at one point, like bashing Equinox, that this is so obnoxious, it's so elitist, this is exactly what gym culture shouldn't be. We should be accepting of people's New Year's resolutions, and so many people change their lives on January 1st, and how disgusting it is that they don't sign people up at this time of year. And like, it was just going on and on, like railing against it. And what I remember, was like reading this Facebook post and thinking to myself, like, I could feel the energy of it. Like she was mad. It felt like this was really keeping her up at night. And she was writing this, she's like seething. And so what I thought about, was how And this is the point I want to make, is that gyms and people are going to do what they're going to do. If a gym decides that this is their mission and brand and this is their set of values and you don't agree with it, you can choose to practice non-attachment. You can choose to say, you know what? I have feelings about that. And that is why I don't go to Equinox. And I'm going to get on with the rest of my life. And I am not I'm going to choose consciously to protect my peace and say, you know what? Other things, other gyms are out there doing what they're going to do, and I'm not going to align with them. And that's it. I'm going to take my time and energy and focus and attention and bring it to the gym that I do align with. And the same is true when some other woman is wearing a sports bra at the gym and you have feelings about it. You might notice, like, that's the same exact thing. That's the reason I bring up the story, is that was the same exact thing that I noticed in my client. It was like she couldn't focus on her own workout because she was so like mad at this woman wearing a sports bra. And it's like, okay, then just don't. And like, this doesn't have to have anything to do with you. And you really can protect your peace by saying, focus on yourself. And it reminds me of like one of my favorite things when we talk about gay marriage and people are like, if you don't like gay marriage, don't get one. Like, that's it. It doesn't have to like ruin your whole life if other people are doing something that is in alignment with them that is not aligned for you. We are allowed to have different belief systems. We are allowed to have different value systems. And honestly, get used to it because it's not going anywhere. Like, you are going to be living in the world where you are constantly seeing things that you don't agree with or that don't, feel good to you. And that's fine. That's fine. You can choose to protect your peace, practice some acceptance about the things that you cannot control, and then just like get back to your own life. And so the last thing I want to say about this is I think about, when we're all going around saying, well, they should do this, they shouldn't do that. Well, that's based on what you believe. That's not necessarily true for everyone. But I keep thinking of the quote, what you judge, you're stuck with. If you are going around the world, you should do this, you should do that, they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that. You are judging, and then you are the one that is holding all that energy. The same way that other people's judgments are none of your business, your judgments are none of their business. So you are the one holding on to all of that. You are the one being really angry about a woman in a sports bra when, like, you know what? Just, you don't want to wear a sports bra to the gym. You don't wear a sports bra to the gym. But if other people are going to be doing that, then other people are going to be doing that. And obviously this is about way more than gym culture, but it just felt like I wanted to make that point. Okay, but the actual last thing I'll say about this is that this doesn't apply to something like if someone is being abusive, right? Or like manipulative or gaslighty or like things like that. Like, I'm not saying tolerate abuse from other people. What I'm talking about is when other people are just out there living their best life and it's really pissing you off, that's the thread you want to follow. Okay, now, having said all of that, I want to go back to mindset stuff. Because I have talked to you about, closing my eyes and my bubble and my breath and my exhales and my visualization and all these things. I didn't even realize, like, I have all these cute little toolbox of ways that I cue safety and presence to myself, especially at the gym in a social context. And what I thought is that I could kind of package all of these under the umbrella of having the mindset of an athlete. So I want to talk to you about that because that to me is another tool, essentially, in a more general sense. So I share in my coaching curriculum, in the module about exercise, that I take and I definitely said this in the exercise episode, so you can go back and listen to those if you want to again, but I take the Nike brand definition of an athlete. That is, if you have a body, you are an athlete, period. And I love that. And I think part of me really appreciates this because when I started working out, it was for the purpose of weight loss. And so then I started getting more into like athletic kind of training, but I never had a sport to play. I actually am not that great at sports. I'm like super fit, but I'm not very coordinated. Like I'm not, anything with a ball, like basketball, soccer, tennis, I'm terrible at. So I'm kind of a very shitty athlete, low key, unless it's like lifting weights or doing like gym type stuff. Like CrossFit, I'd probably be pretty decent at, things like that. Anyway. So I think I always appreciated this take on like, if you have a body, you are an athlete, because it meant that I was allowed to call myself an athlete, even though I didn't have a sport to play. And then in my curriculum, what I follow that up with is athletes don't diet and exercise. They eat and train. So energetically, these are very different. Athletes eat and train. They don't diet and exercise. So what that means to me in a lot of ways, as I said in previous episodes, is that if I'm eating and training, the energy there is abundance. I want more. I want more strength. I want more muscle. I want more speed. I want more agility, more power, more focus, more strength, more flexibility, more. Diet and exercise feels like scarcity, less, right? How do I eat less? How do I make myself smaller? How do I get thin? How do I, I keep going back to like quiet and timid, and like obedient is the word that also comes to me right now. So just energetically, those are very different. And so when I think about what it is to train like an athlete, that's where my mind goes when I'm at the gym. And so when I think about what that means, it's like, if I'm at a gym and I'm working out and I consider myself an athlete, which you can too, because again, and this is what I mean when I say, think of yourself as an athlete. It doesn't have to be anything physical. You don't have to be doing anything physical. If you think about yourself as an athlete, I'm talking about the mindset of an athlete. And what that means is they're not distracted. They're not distracted by other people. They are focused. They have a goal. They want to perform. They want to, it's for them. It's for them. It's not for other people. That is what I mean when I say adopt the mindset of an athlete. And again, you don't need to be in the gym to do this. You can adopt the mindset of an athlete in anything you do, because it ultimately means that you're focused, that you're disciplined, that you are committed, that you are present. And to me, I know I said this in the exercise episodes too, but the word integrity, that you are acting in integrity with yourself. You don't need to be lifting weights to practice this stuff. But if you think of yourself with the mindset of an athlete, how does an athlete show up to work out and then apply that to whatever it is you're doing? Now you are just embodying these characteristics. And what's coming to me now, which is so funny because I've thought a lot about this. This is something that just like has been floating around in my head, but I never knew, I guess, where to stick it in here. But now it's coming back up. This is not in my notes, but I'm thinking about how this actually, I think, can be very profound. When I was at Michigan, it was my senior year, and I was a tutor. I was a tutor for student athletes. And so I used to go to the like athletic center and tutor a couple kids. And what I remember being like acutely aware of at this time in my life, both at the athletic center where I was tutoring, but also definitely at the gym too, was the way that female athletes would dress. Because very often, and obviously this is not a blanket statement about all female athletes all the time, but in my experience, what I remember observing was the way that athletes were very often in like baggy clothes, like typical athletic stuff, like baggy clothes, sweatpants, sweatshirts, like baggy t-shirts. And what I'm saying is, I, at this point, after having lost all my weight and being really aware of bodies, and also very excited about and like proud of my own, I was always so aware that these women athletes, they weren't showing off their bodies. They weren't dressing in a way where you could even, tell, like everything was loose and baggy because they were athletes. Their bodies were instruments. Their bodies were not ornaments. Their body, like they were using their bodies to do these incredible things. I mean, I went to Michigan, it was a D1 school. So it was like these athletes were taking it seriously too. They weren't, and so I never talked to anyone about this, but what I remember thinking was that it was reflecting to me just such a different like way of being in their bodies that I found very inspiring, because at the time I didn't want to wear sweats. I wanted to wear, I was wearing like leggings probably everywhere I went because they were comfy, but they were also skin tight. And so that to me, like, again, so I'm saying all this because it's like the mindset of an athlete is not the internalized male gaze. It's like, I'm here to work. I'm here to strengthen myself. I'm here to build a skill set. I'm here to perform. I'm here for bettering myself and enhancing my capabilities. I'm not thinking about what you think of me. Like that to me feels so like incongruent with the identity of an athlete, And so that's another thing that I just want to offer, because when I think about what makes this possible for me and why, I enjoy it so much, it's because, when I think of myself as an athlete, I don't care what I look like. That's not what my body is for. My body is for this, the physical thing that I'm manifesting here. It's not about looks and what other people are thinking. So you can take that, you can hold on to that, and use that in the gym, out of the gym, whatever you want to do. But I do think that you can consider yourself an athlete if this is something that resonates with you. Again, more mentally than anything. And then the other thing I don't want to forget to say about it that I keep thinking of is, if you are running track, I'm trying to think like in the Olympics, like if you're running sprints on a track, or you're training to do that, and you are, kind of neck and neck with the other guy on the track, and that they might be, a little bit behind you. Something that I've learned about running track, and those of you that have run these kinds of races, this, you've been trained in this, that if you're running straight and you look back to see where the other guy is, you're going to end up going slower, and you're going to give them an opportunity to catch up to you. Okay. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. But if you are running straight and you get preoccupied or concerned with where the other people on the track are, you got to keep running. You got to keep running. You got to keep your head forward. You got to stay focused on going forward. You cannot look back, because all it's going to do is slow you down. And so this, again, is exactly what I'm talking about, where when I'm in yoga and I start thinking about anything other than the pose, I fall right out of it, right? If you start thinking about what other people are doing or where other people are, what's going on with other people, you're falling out. You're slowing yourself down. And this is to me, this captures what I'm talking about when I say the mindset of an athlete. Athletes have to be so disciplined, not just physically, they have to be so disciplined in their mind and what they allow themselves to think about, because as soon as they start hearing the voice of distraction, if they follow that, what's the other team doing? What's the other person doing? Where's the other, participant, whatever it is, that's where we fail. That's where we fall. That's where we slow down. So this, again, it's all, if you take the mindset of an athlete into your animal brain in a social context, you don't have to be doing anything physical. You don't have to be exercising. You don't have to be at the gym, but the same idea applies, that you stay in your lane and you keep looking forward and you keep focusing on yourself, regardless of where you want to integrate this. And all of this, while I was writing these notes, I thought about recently when I was back in Brooklyn, I met a guy at the gym, and my business cards are actually out at my gym. And shout out to Absolute Power in Brooklyn, because it really is a wonderful place. And they're very supportive of, like, you know, small businesses and local business. Anyway, so my business cards are out at the gym. And so when I was talking to this guy, he asked what I do, and I gave him my card, and I was telling him about the podcast and other things. And then he started following me on Instagram. And it was really funny because a few days later at the gym, he was like, I saw one of your videos on Instagram. And his immediate follow-up comment was, you are a completely different person when you're here. And I was like, I know. The point being, you know, when I present myself professionally, or, you know, at least publicly on something like an Instagram reel, it's a very different energy than who I am at the gym. Because when I am at the gym, I am locked in, I'm in athlete mode. So I felt very seen by that, because, you know, a lot of you, like, listening to this, you don't see that side of me unless I post like a picture of it, or, you know, I'm really sweaty sometimes and you'll see a screenshot of that or whatever. But I felt very seen in the, like, whoa, you are completely different, because that's how I feel. I feel when I go to the gym extremely tapped into my masculine energy. And then, you know, when I'm guiding a meditation or holding space for my clients or at a retreat, I am way more in my feminine. And so I have moments where I see that, I experience kind of the juxtaposition of those energies throughout my day. Anyway, so that's what I thought of about all of this. And now I'm going to go back to another thing I remember mentioning probably in the episodes about exercise, but I want to talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger for a moment, because he really got it. He really got a lot of this, like, mentally. And why I'm saying that is because what Arnold Schwarzenegger would do was, he to me was a really great example of having, like, the animal brain in a social context, meaning he did want to look good. He did want to attract a lot of women. He had, you know, we have the ego, like, that's fine. He had all that. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. And we will talk more about this in depth moving forward, but how to kind of navigate and reconcile, like, wanting to look good and caring what you look like, but also not defining yourself by it. That's valid. And we do need to talk more about it. But so Arnold, like my buddy Arnie, he was there with that. Okay. He wanted to look good. Cool. He was driven by that. But the other thing that he really got, the reason I say he got it, was because when Arnold Schwarzenegger went to the gym, he was locked in. And when he was at the gym in the present moment, he was not thinking about all the women he was going to attract when he walked on the beach. What he was thinking about was the mind to muscle connection. He was very zoned in to paying attention to his own body while he was moving it. And I think that has a lot to do with why he became Arnold Schwarzenegger. So again, that's what you want to pay attention to. That's the page we can all take from that kind of, you know, his book there is, you don't have to be lifting weights. You don't have to be building your body. But when you get locked in and dialed in and zoned in, that all will support you in feeling safe, which is what all of this is about. And then the other thing, I just want to, like, drop all these in here. Maybe one will hit more than another. I shared this on Instagram too a few weeks ago when I was in San Diego, and I was running up and down the convention center stairs. So if you don't know about the convention center in San Diego, it's like a million stairs. And for me, that's really fun because it's like a Stairmaster, but in real life. So I'm doing my sprints up and down the stairs, and these two guys showed up, and just toward the tail end of my workout, they were starting to do theirs. And it was like it's like a thing in San Diego downtown. And I didn't know this because I didn't live in San Diego during COVID, but the guys told me, they were like, yeah, we call these the COVID stairs, because when all the gyms were closed, like everyone was going up and down these stairs. So anyway, so I started talking to them a little bit, and one of them was just recovering from like getting sick, and he was starting to feel better. So this was like one of his first workouts back, and he wasn't trying to do anything like too intense. And his friend was kind of like, busting his chops a little bit, like making fun of him a little bit, like, you could do more than that. And, come on, you want to race me, like all this stuff. And what I loved about it was the guy who was recovering and starting to feel better was also a personal trainer. And when he was kind of going up and down the stairs, the response that he had to his friend was over and over again, it's me versus me. It's me versus me. It's me versus me. This is not about me and you. I'm not racing you. I don't care what you're doing. You go at your speed. You go up and down the stairs as many times as you want. It's me versus me. And I loved that. And I just remember being like, yes, this is everything. Because that is, and I still like, I feel like that's like another little just thing that's going to like stick in my head, almost like an earworm. It's going to like stick in my head, because this is how I experience the world. Is like, to me, that's so profound. Like, he wasn't doing it to be deep, but it's a profound message that is, fuck out of here. I don't care what you're doing. It's me versus me in here. And again, that to me is the mindset of an athlete. That is athletic. And whatever you're doing, you can practice that. It's not about me versus you. It's me versus me. So I also want to include in all of this another thing that I noticed along, my own journey, and definitely working with my clients, is that like, there is nothing wrong with tracking. And I'm going to tell you more about my own experience of tracking. I've been tracking a lot of stuff lately with this last intentional weight loss. And so there's nothing wrong with tracking. There's nothing wrong with tracking your food, your calories, your steps, your heart rate, your whatever, calories. There's nothing wrong with tracking. The problem with tracking is that we often have a relationship with it that does not feel safe, and the meaning that we make of it, and all the ways we define ourselves by it, and all right, that's a problem. But anyway, what I want to say here, okay, is that if you are tracking, and throughout your workout or whatever it is, again, because this could be workouts, but this could be anything, and it could be tracking your workouts, but it could be getting lost in the numbers and, the calculations game in whatever it is that you are working on. But if you, for example, are in a workout and you're tracking, and all you're thinking about is like, how many calories have I burned? And every 5 seconds, you're checking your watch, and you're checking your watch, and you're checking your watch. And you're just like, if you're in that mindset while you're working out, that is another way that you are not here now. That is another way that you are not in your body. Do you think Arnold Schwarzenegger was checking his fucking Apple Watch? No. Do you think if Arnold Schwarzenegger had an Apple Watch at the time that he would be interested in checking it all out? No, he's focused on the mind-muscle connection. Okay, so that's the kind of stuff you want to remember. That is, these are all ways that we get disconnected and fragmented in our own consciousness when we are doing things with our bodies. So pay attention to that, because it's just, again, sometimes it's the internalized male gaze, sometimes it is the actual male gaze, and sometimes it is your tracking devices and getting distracted by paying attention to the numbers. So all ways that we can notice ourselves disconnecting and then find our way back. So I think the last kind of quote unquote tool or practice that I have is, I don't know when this started, but I got in the habit, and I was really training myself to be in the habit months ago. That was before every set of reps I did of any kind of exercise, I would have a moment, very much like my dentist moment, where, look at the bar, be one with the bar before you lift the bar. I started having this moment where I would just say to myself in my head, lock in. And something would like shift, like energetically, I could feel myself lock in, like truly. And I started like really enjoying that. Like it was like a, because the thing with, if you're lifting weights and that's what your movement looks like, it's appropriate that you do a set of reps and then you just kind of hang out for like a minute and a half or something. Like you need to rest in between your sets. And it can get distracting, right? And so I try to not look at my phone at all while I'm working out, even in between sets, unless I really have to, because that's so distracting. But it's easy to get distracted because you need to wait a minute before you pick up the weights again. And so I would do this thing where, I would like look around and maybe I'm talking to people or I'm flipping through my iTunes or, whatever. But when it was time to pick the weights back up, I would communicate to my whole body, lock in. And I would literally say that to myself in my head. And it really helped. And I genuinely, now this is just for some comedic relief, I genuinely think that the reason I started doing this, or however it occurred to me, was because I saw this posted on Instagram. I definitely reposted it because when I read it, I thought it was so funny. I don't know why this made me laugh so hard. But I saw this thing that said, you think the itsy bitsy spider gave a fuck about the rain? No, it climbed up the spout again. Lock in. And I read that and I was just like, I love this because again, this is like, it's hilarious, but it's profound. It is profound. Like, try it again, like, yes, you're going to fail. Get up and do it again. Lock in. And then I think it was that got those words like in my head, but then I started taking it to the gym. So again, whether it is weightlifting or anything else, if you can have a moment to yourself to say, lock in, like we are showing up right now. We are doing work right now. We are committing to something right now. Lock in. Really what that means is bring yourself here now. Be in the present moment. Are you here in the room, right? Can you make this a mind-body activity, not just a body activity? Lock in. Call yourself in. And what I've said, I find myself saying this sometimes when I'm guiding a meditation. I don't know if I heard this somewhere or if it came from me. I really don't know. But the idea that I invite people to do when we are either starting a coaching call or starting a group coaching call or starting a workshop or a mastermind, things like that, is I will say things like, call in any parts of you that are still in the past. So you might notice that as like your mind keeps wandering to this thing that happened in the past, your mind keeps wandering to the things that's in the future. And so I will invite people to just energetically call in all the parts of you that are still elsewhere. And if you notice that, and I had a client recently say to me, I could literally feel it. I could feel parts of me coming back into my body. Like I didn't know that they were gone. I didn't know that they were elsewhere. I didn't know that they were missing. I didn't know that they weren't here. But when I hear that and I call them back in and I set the intention to say, okay, everyone, right? Past, present, future, we're going to be here now. Something shifts. And that to me is what is embodied, is captured in that habit, that practice that I now have of just saying those words to myself, lock in. So I want to, again, offer that to you. And this is an example of how like everything is energy. Everything is energy. It's not just words. Words carry meaning and have an energy to them. And you can, start to use your superpowers. We talked about in the very, very beginning of the solo series of like, I believe like we really do have these like psychic abilities. We are playing with energy all the time. You could take it seriously because it's real. So all of that being said, I do think that I've probably made this point because now I'm hearing myself repeat this language that has now been threaded through the last few episodes of fragmented consciousness. But what I keep thinking about in all of this, because as I'm recording this, I'm also like working out every day and I'm having this really cool experience of just like seeing myself do the things and then being able to come back and like talk about them. So anyway, so I've been thinking about this a lot in real time, and I just want to connect explicitly, if it isn't like super clear, that when we're talking about the fragmented consciousness, whether it's again the internalized male gaze, the actual outsider gaze at the gym, or living in or living with an oppressed social identity, so that the same way that I in a bigger body would have to scan my environment. Am I going to fit into that chair? Can I fit in that booth? Is that seatbelt going to close? Like that kind of anxiety. And then, like I said, with white privilege, I don't have to worry about that because of the color of my skin. But the same cannot, unfortunately, be said for people who do not have white skin. Fragmented consciousness, right? It's all the same idea of like, part of me always has to be online to think about this other thing. And so just like, the study that I shared about the woman with the math tests, some of them wearing sweaters, some of them wearing bathing suits, the ones in the bathing suits doing worse because part of their psychic energy is being spent thinking about how their body looks and is being perceived and things like that. It's like you can't get a good workout if you are doing it with a fragmented consciousness. And again, losing your focus, the same way that the women could not perform optimally on that math test is the same way that you can't perform optimally in your workout if that's where your energy is going. And as is, again, probably likely abundantly clear at this point, I'm not just talking about a good workout. Like you can't live your life in alignment if the energy again is being kind of like sucked by things out of you that you are not even mindful of. And that thought led me to write down this statement that is, in order to reclaim your peace, you need to reclaim your power. In order to reclaim your power, you need to reclaim your presence. Period. I'm going to say that again, break it down a little bit. In order for you to reclaim your peace, okay? I mean, that's what we all want, right? You want peace with food. You want peace with your body, inner peace. That's what we're all going for. Safety, calm, ease, right? It's peace. In order to reclaim peace, you had it at one point before you were socialized and conditioned to be so, animal brain social context. You had peace when you were a little one, and a lot of this was not on your radar yet. Okay. So in order to reclaim your peace, you need to reclaim your power. In order for you to reclaim your peace and actually have an embodied experience of safety, you have to be empowered, because you are not going to access that unless you do something about it, right? It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And if you are not exercising your power to heal yourself and wake up and come out of the cave, you're not going to access your peace. However, in order to reclaim your power, you have to reclaim your presence. You have to be in the present moment. You have to be with yourself. You have to be locked into your own embodied life in order for you to even be able to have your power to exercise so that you can experience peace. Like that's the whole idea. Okay. So that feels really powerful and really important, because that's what's going on here. All of these things, everything that I'm talking to you about over these episodes is about you reclaiming your presence, you being able to be here now with the energy of safety. And that is where you tap into your power, and that is where your peace lies. So I don't know if that lands for you the way it did for me, but I was like, wow, I love that. All right. Couple other things. One is it felt like this whole conversation would be incomplete without also adding in somewhere. Another thing I've noticed about all of this, which is kind of funny, that is the intention, or how do I want to say this? Like, if you're working really hard on not paying attention or focusing on what other people are thinking, that itself can also be a distraction. So you can get distracted by trying to not be distracted. And this might require that you like go out there and try this on to understand kind of how it works and what I'm saying. But like what I've noticed is if my intention, it's kind of like one of those things where if you want to think about what you want, you don't want to think about what you don't want. You don't want to, if we're talking about like manifestation and the, law of attraction and things like that, you don't want to think about, I want less of this. I want less of this. I want to not do this. I don't want this. What you do want is to share it with yourself and the universe in terms of things you do want. And so I'm saying this because if my thing when I'm at the gym is like, I'm not focusing on what other people are thinking of me and I'm not worried about what other people are doing and it's like, okay, but that's now where all my energy is going. Now I'm focused on not being distracted. And so all of that is still not me paying attention to myself. So instead of it being, my goal will be to not focus on other people, scratch that, throw that out, and replace it with the goal or the intention is to stay focused on myself. That on a deeper, more, I think, maybe advanced level of this conversation is a clarification that is necessary. And then the last, another thing that I want to share in terms of like tools, skills, practices, habits that can support you in feeling safe in your animal brain social context situation is mindfulness. And I am almost so annoyed, honestly, that not that I like have to talk about this, but like it is so one of those things, when they say like you can't learn how to swim by reading about swimming. It's like I can talk to you all day about mindfulness, but really the only way you're going to get it is if you're practicing it. And the only way that it's going to make any difference to you is if you're willing to experiment with it and actually experience it. So I feel the reason I say I'm like annoyed is like, I feel like I could give a lecture, like teaching you how to swim. And it's like, okay, but you really just have to get in the pool. So similarly, that's how I feel about mindfulness. But the reason I'm telling you this is because mindfulness is literally paying attention to what you're doing. It's paying attention on purpose to the present moment. Okay. That's what mindfulness is. And so if you are kind of on autopilot, or again, you're really kind of lost in the present or in the past or the future, you're not being mindful. You're not doing things mindfully. And a lot of things we don't do mindfully, like we said here, like brushing your teeth and taking a shower and folding your clothes and doing the dishes. Like there's a lot of things we're not always paying attention to. But what I keep playing with is activating mindfulness. And it doesn't need to be a formal meditation. And this is like, I think the next kind of few points I want to make are really, really important. Not, again, just about exercise in the gym and things like that, but in so much about being a spiritual being, physical experience, animal brain, social context, all of it, okay? So regarding mindfulness, what I mean by that is, can you actually see the thing that you're looking at? Can you actually hear the thing that you're listening to? And it's so, like I always say, it feels like the solutions are hiding in plain sight because it's not complicated. A lot of this stuff is not complicated. It's very challenging. It is simple, but it is not easy. I know that it's not easy because of how much you have to rewire your brain to do this, because if what you're used to doing is operating mindlessly and now you want to practice mindfulness, it's going to take a lot of work. But again, this is not the kind of work that people can see that you're doing or will show up physically. But what I've noticed is, again, especially in the gym, when I start getting distracted or I'm in my head and I'm thinking, like for example, right now I'm looking at my water bottle. My water bottle is on my desk. And right, it's like I see my water bottle every day. I'm not focusing, I don't think about it, it's whatever. But I can practice mindfulness for a moment to look at it and like notice the way that the light is coming in from the window, and it's lighter on one side, it's darker on the other. There's black, there's brown on it. I see the little handle. There's a scratch on the left side. I see the lines. There's like this texture to it. Like on the top, it's shiny. Like that now I could just like, I can tell you so many things about water, but this is what I mean when I talk about practice mindfulness. Like, can you see the thing you're looking at? And it's very much just, we talk about mindful eating. Like, can you taste the food you're eating? Can you be in your body? And so it is, again, frustrating to me because I can't manufacture this experience for you, but I can invite you to pay attention to this as another tool. Because even we just did this at the retreat I had in San Diego where we were talking about this, and I was just saying to the few people in the room, like, stare at an object. Okay. You can practice this right now. Stare at an object, look at it. But as you're looking at it, start thinking about tomorrow. Start thinking about all the things you have to do, but you're still looking at the object, right? The object hasn't changed. I can do this with my water bottle right now. I'm looking at my water bottle. What am I going to do after this? I have to make dinner later. I still have to shower. What time am I going to go to bed? Blah, 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 right? Okay. I'm still looking at the water bottle, but I'm not seeing it because I'm in my head. I'm no longer here. And then all of a sudden I can lock in. Like, this is how I do this in my life. Lock in. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, right, water bottle. Look at the water bottle. See the water bottle. Notice the water bottle. Pay attention to the water bottle. What do I see about it? And we could do this with all of our five senses. We could do that. I think sound is a great anchor as well. But it's like, it's these things that can very powerfully, very effectively get you back in your body and get you feeling safe. And this, again, has nothing to do with being in the gym or not. I get to practice this in my gym playground, but you can do this all day, every day. These are the things you want to start paying attention to if you are, again, so preoccupied with the internalized male gaze that you are living your life with a fragmented consciousness. Can you actually see the things you're looking at? Can you start to bring yourself back inside? Okay, so I have, once again, I would say this is probably now 2/3 of the way through all the follow-up thoughts I had on my little sidebar solo series. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to finish all this, but I do know I can tell you exactly what the next episode is going to be about. Is really, again, another conversation about like deeply integrating this in different ways. The embodiment of the energy of all of this, because this really is, I'm seeing, it's really cool and magical how a lot of this is organically kind of coming together as I just follow the thread and keep letting what wants to be spoken. So anyway, so that's what's going to happen is my intention anyway is to wrap this kind of up in the next episode. We'll see how it goes. And so I think that for now, we have made it to the end of, I don't remember what chapter this, are we on chapter 18 right now? Something like that. Because just as a kind of, I don't want to say like a sneak peek, but like what I'm seeing in terms of themes and how, when I say it's coming together, is like, think about it this way. If what I want to talk to you about is something like intentional weight loss, and how to do that in a safe, sustainable, healthy way by really integrating fierce self-compassion with tender self-compassion. And again, it's not just those as ideas. It's like, that's got to be embodied. That's got to be the energy in the body. And how to do that, you can probably start to see like thematically, we're laying the foundation for that by talking about locking in, like dialing in and really taking that seriously and bringing yourself into the present moment, right? There's a fierceness to that. There is a fierceness to lock in, but there's also, lock into what? The present moment as I am, embodied in acceptance, safe, present. It's like, it's all this is this is the magic cocktail to me. So anyway, so I'm saying that because ultimately what I want to talk a little bit more about to bring it all together is this is how we embody, HILA, high involvement, low attachment, and things like that. So, all right. So that's the little taste of where we're going. And now it has been 1 hour completely. This is episode number 2 that what I realized is, you probably know this at this point if you're following the podcast, but I thought, and I said this in the previous episode, that we were going to start putting the video up on chapter 15, but turns out we started using the video on chapter 12. So I thought that the last one was the first one that I knew we were going to be using the video, but chapter 12, 13, and 14, that was just me doing my thing, and I had no idea I was going to end up putting that on YouTube. So fun facts. So now it is time to go. And I hope you have the best week of your whole life. I love you so much. I very much appreciate you being here. And I will see you next week.